Charmed Life Therapy, powerfully and subconsciously changing your life. Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy. Happy Sunday out there. Just going to have a little update on ye old Blake Lively drama on the internet. We won't delve into documents or anything today. We'll touch on things that are going on because clearly a lot is going on. But it's like the court has stood up these last few days and just said, "Oi mates, none of you buggers can just dump letters on for no reason," kind of thing, especially you, Perez Hilton, and you, Blake Lively. The Blake Lively one is an interesting one because it feels like a win for Team Baldoni in that the judges turned around and said, "Nobody asked you to contribute to this argument. I agreed to allow the Wayfair parties to submit a 2-page letter as to why they shouldn't provide documents through to the present or through to at least a further date than they previously have. This was nothing to do with you, Blake Lively. You can't just chip in. This was a limited thing." And that feels like a win, I think, to most people, certainly a rap on the knuckles to Blake. But I kind of, at this point, I didn't get overly excited because I think, well, that's still not to say she won't win the argument. You know what I mean? Just because he's given that little bit of a knuckle rap, I don't think it necessarily means that he won't grant it. That remains to be seen. And I know Perez had recently submitted a letter, hadn't he? Adding in the James Vuska, a little text message exchange or not so much James Vuska, it was Melissa Nathan, wasn't it, that he kind of included. Presented to the judge in Las Vegas this text message exchange where TAG are discussing how they should get hold of Perez if necessary because he seems to be gaining traction on the whole story, which of course to Perez says, look, this proves that I wasn't already on the payroll, I wasn't already doing something. And he also submitted various bits of evidence to do with Blake Lively and the kind of things that she does. And the judge was like, no, not really. I don't really want to know that. Like I say, it's again this thing of, it's not a repository for people's letters. You have to kind of be invited to it, or you have to ask for permission to put something on, or it has to be framed as a motion. Because I guess it just shows you, really. People get excited or they think they've got the upper hand or whatever in terms of Ezra Hudson and Manat and that side of things, that even a lawyer can get so giddy that they think they have the upper hand that they forget actually there's a process to this. So it was quite nice to see that, really, because Wayfair seems to be forever being told that they're inappropriate in what they're doing. So it was quite nice for the other side to be told for a change, wasn't it? It did feel like a slight win. But yeah, Perez had tried to present this text message exchange between Melissa Nathan and her employees, and as part of backing that up and trying to mitigate this idea of all the names that he calls Blake Lively in what she's presented in Las Vegas, he's provided links. Ms. Lively got married on a plantation. Ms. Lively admitted to doing blackface. Ms. Lively mocked and belittled a journalist for congratulating her on her being pregnant. So it's kind of basically saying, this is an unsavoury character. It's not out of the norm for a journalist to be able to point that out, basically. And kind of when I clicked on the plantation link that he provided, yeah, I'm not sure if I've still got it up actually, but it was interesting from the point of view that as regards the plantation thing, the link went to an article whereby, the Ryan's public comment was what we saw was a wedding venue on Pinterest and what we should have seen was blah, blah, blah. But the thing is about that it cleverly skirts the idea that I presume it was Blake's dream to get married on a plantation. So did they go looking for a plantation, and conveniently found one? I think that's more likely than just they were literally just browsing general wedding videos. I think there's a good chance that she went looking for a plantation that hosted weddings, because she's just obsessed with that period in time and the style, and she must see herself, like I said before, as the lady on the veranda with the cocktail and somebody to fan her and the rest of it. I don't know, it's pure conjecture really, but yeah, I think in hindsight, I don't think it's so much that they just saw a wedding venue on Pinterest. I think they probably looked for a plantation because she wanted to have that kind of style of wedding, I guess. But anyway, of course, there's lots of other things going on as well, isn't there? There's been this story come out that apparently Robert Downey Jr. and Ryan Reynolds have had a beef on the set of Avengers Doomsday. And I've got a twofold problem with this, really, because I really don't want Deadpool anywhere near the Avengers. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think it sits well with it. Deadpool, I don't even want him in as a cameo at this point, and it would annoy me so much. I don't even want Hugh Jackman anywhere near it at this point. But it's not entirely surprising, is it, that, I mean, we don't know how much of it is true and how much of it is cobbled together in order to fit a narrative, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they would clash on set. The bit that I've read, and obviously the stories, all of these stories, they always wander off into something else, don't they? But the little bit that I've seen seems to indicate that possibly Ryan may have overstepped and said a comment about Robert Downey Jr.'s wife, who is, in my opinion, I've always felt like, and I think he has credited her with it before, to be honest, that she is a strong, powerful woman, is Susan Downey. I never said Downey Jr. Does she count as Downey Jr.? I just guess she's just Susan Downey, isn't she? But you know what I mean? I think she's responsible for getting him back on the straight and narrow. I think she's like a guiding force in his life for sure. She's business savvy and the rest of it. So I guess if I had to guess, I would imagine that if there was a beef, that Ryan possibly alluded to something like who wore the trousers or something like that, or do you have to run it by your wife? Or, you could just imagine it, and like I say, this is pure conjecture on my part, but you could just imagine it was something along those lines. If it happened, because from what I understand from one particular source, was that something was said about Robert Downey Jr.'s wife, or because when you don't know people very well, you have to be careful with your humour and what you tell them and what you share, because you don't know what's going to offend people, what is an overstep, what their own sensitivities are. So he said something which apparently led to Robert Downey Jr. saying something about Ryan's wife, which you can imagine what that might have been. And apparently there was, I guess it might have been pushing and shoving. I can't see anybody having punched anybody, but apparently there was pushing and shoving or rounding up to each other or whatever it was. And like I say, we don't know how true it was, but you could understand that would have happened, because basically if you step on an Avengers set and Robert Downey Jr. is in it, it's his set. And I don't think it would sit very well with Ryan. It doesn't share very well, does he? He doesn't share his toys, Ryan Reynolds, at all. So I don't think he deals very well with being an extra on somebody else's set. I think he would find it very hard to just show up, do what he's supposed to be doing and go away at the end of the day, you know what I mean? So you can imagine they would absolutely butt heads. And of course then it came out apparently that Robert Downey Jr. turned down a cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine. But again, I just do not think that Robert Downey Jr., who has, for all the part of Tony Stark, obviously has some humour and he's quite dry and things like that, and there's a gravitas to him, isn't there? And I don't think it would be Robert Downey Jr.'s thing to pop up in Deadpool and Wolverine and denigrate his own character by, being a caricature version of it. And of course, and the thing is also that plot line was nice and tied off and all of the rest of it, and Tony Stark put to bed, if you like, in that incarnation. I don't think it would have been the right thing to bring him into Deadpool and Wolverine for the sake of a few more bums on seats, or to create a bit of a spectacle and all of that. And I think Robert Downey Jr., for all it's a comic book character and the rest of it, he has a lot of respect for what it is, and he approaches it in a serious manner. He doesn't just do it off the cuff. I mean, we've just recently heard that apparently he asked for something like 3 weeks worth of reshoots, didn't he? Because they tried doing it with him just voicing it on the side and somebody in the suit. But acting isn't just your voice. You know, it's like even when people do it as animations, don't they? They end up putting the actors' body movements as they're doing the voice, and they'll base it a lot on the actor's face. An actor is just not a voice, it's the whole package, isn't it? So it's like I always kind of had a problem with The Mandalorian a bit, because I thought I want to know that it's Pedro Pascal in that suit at all times. You know, I don't want it to be somebody else and he's just doing the voice in a booth somewhere. And that's the thing about Deadpool as well. It could literally be anybody in that suit doing it. And the thing is that oftentimes during that movie it actually will be someone else in a suit. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of why it doesn't resonate with me, apart from I don't like the humour and I don't mind violence in things unless it's against animals in movies. I don't think anybody can take violence against animals. I remember years ago when we were going to see Seabiscuit, and I said to my mum, I said, the minute that horse gets sick, I'm out of here. And I didn't know much about the story at that point. And then, of course, lo and behold, there's a point in where he's injured, and it's like, oh my God, I can't cope with this. But we can readily cope with humans being mowed down. But I think it has to be done for a reason. And I don't know whether it's because I've done a lot of work on myself now, but yeah, I find I'm a lot more sensitive to horror and violence and things. I can't just cope with it in the same way anymore. I can't just dismiss it. It kind of doesn't gel with my energy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So even like the beginning of Deadpool and Wolverine was very off-putting for me, because it's basically he mows down like a bunch of soldiers. And my little head now is going, but yeah, they might not be the good guys, but they're really just doing the job. And they're mown down in ways that are really graphic, with, you know, jokes all the way through it. And doesn't he use Wolverine's corpse at some point to kill people? And it's just like, it's just not my thing. So I don't think that Robert Downey Jr.'s side of things meshes with the Deadpool side of things anyway. I don't think it would have been right to mix them up, you know. And I felt a bit that way about everybody that was in Deadpool and Wolverine that were kind of reprising roles, you know. So Chris Evans that popped up and you thought, oh, it's going to be Captain America, and it was Johnny Storm and things like that, because it did mock what has been much beloved and has meant a lot to people in their lives, you know, even Blade and stuff like that. And I know people are saying stuff now about back what happened with Ryan Reynolds on Blade Trinity set and stuff, and looking at that through a different lens now. Was it Wesley Snipes that was problematic, or was it that too much leeway was given to Ryan Reynolds to tinker with his lines and stuff, and to poke fun at Wesley Snipes in effect? And Wesley Snipes is kind of a serious actor, you know. He's not, it's a bit like Downey Jr. When you're a really creative person, you're also very, very sensitive. You know, it's like when you're a very creative person, it literally means that you're living mostly in your subconscious mind. And when barbs go into your subconscious mind, they lodge very deeply. You know, they're not as easy to shrug off. So I guess that's why tensions can run high on sets, because you've got a whole band of creative people, not just the actors and actresses, but all of the cast and crew too. So I guess that's why often, you know, these little jokes and these puns do not sit well with people. And, you know, we've heard evidence before of Ryan going after TJ Miller in character as Deadpool, and on a set in front of a whole bunch of people, and just doing that banter thing, almost as if, well, if I say it as if it's the character and I talk to you as if you're the character, then somehow that doesn't count as being harassing and nasty and bullying and the rest of it. And you can't just dismiss these things out of hand. So as we kind of predicted the other day as well, we know that I still think that there's something entirely coordinated about how the James Vuska thing came out. You know, he was happily siding with Team Wayfarer up to the point of losing his job and all of this, and then I think he's just gone shopping for whichever was going to get him out of the mess he'd created for himself in the best possible way. So has he gone to Team Lively? Have Team Lively approached him? We kind of know that Team Lively approached Perez at one point when it was, you know, when they were about approaching the judge and can we come to some kind of agreement or something like that. So who knows really what has happened behind the scenes, but it definitely looks like James Vuska, according to some of the things that Without a Crystal Ball put out there, it does kind of look like he was kind of unstable a bit and fragile and kind of like he lost his perspective and stuff. I think he kind of forgot to not be a part of the story in essence. I think he kind of started enjoying being part of the narrative and like being able to message people like Melissa Nathan and Brian Friedman and feeling like he had an in and the rest of it. So yeah, and they were just awfully quick, weren't they, Blake's side of things, to come back with that supplemental letter as well saying, hey Judge, you know, this bolsters our claims of why we need more evidence from these people. You know, clearly they're up to no good. Clearly they're not showing full context of things. So we really need all of that information on an expanded footing, I guess, you know. And it just didn't sit right, did it? Especially in timing with the Isabella Ferrer saga as well, all at the same time. It just seemed like more narrative to kind of generate that Justin couldn't be trusted. Justin was not a good guy. Justin was this harassing male on set, and now he was clearly still harassing, and all of the rest of it. And of course, now as well, we have the news that Blake has got a new movie in the works. And I feel like I might have read this book at some point, if it has come from a book. It's very, very familiar. Something maybe as long as 10 years ago, I don't know, but I definitely read a book where it was an actress and this supposed survival guy dumped on an island, and then it transpires he hasn't got actually any skills and it falls to her. And I guess like that's kind of disheartening to some people, but I think you've got to bear in mind that all of this will be a deal. It'll be a trade-off for something else, because we know like that Justin and team did not want Blake for It Ends With Us, that it was part of the deal that got set up that it had to have a name attached to it. And, you know, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? So don't think for some reason that this was that everybody's first choice in this regard for this new movie was going to be Blake Lively. And it's like they're probably possibly even willing to take a loss on it, given whatever else the other thing is that's involved in the deal, because I don't think they're bearing in mind that, you know, somebody must be thinking somewhere, do people at this point in time want to see a movie where Blake Lively is going to kind of lord it over the man, make the man look weak, make the man look like he can't cope, make it look like she's the one that's got the power and the control. It's not really the brightest idea to be putting Blake Lively in that kind of role at the moment, and people are saying it'll go straight to Prime. It might be being made for streaming, but I think I remember at the time, if it's the same book, it was quite a fun book and it was quite an original concept. But in the meantime, it's been done quite a lot, hasn't it? We had a J-Lo one, didn't we, with Josh Duhamel a little while ago, where it was like I nearly said plantation wedding, an island wedding or something, and criminals stormed it. And then we had Sandra Bullock, didn't we, with Channing Tatum, which was a bit of a similar thing. Was he supposed to be a romantic? I can't remember, but it was a similar thing. Weak man, woman has to be the powerful one, step in and get everything done. So it's not really original anymore. And I think most people probably think Blake is getting a little bit old for this now. I think now, as she's getting that bit older, and of course 37 is not old, you know, people keep trying to say she's pushing 40 and all of that. She's 37, she's not pushing 40 yet. Let's be a little bit fair. But I think when you watch her now, and even when you watch her on the red carpets when she's running around straightening people's crowns and the rest of it and fixing their outfits, she's getting that mumsy thing about. And I don't want to offend any mums when I say that, but I just think she's coming across more mumsy. And I guess it can't be helped when you've got 4 children at home, all under, 10 years old. But yeah, I think she's not the ingenue anymore, is she? So she needs some help finding a niche, I think, again, because I don't think this is going to work. So it's no point like ragging on her for anything like that, I don't think, or the fact she's going to keep working. Deals will keep being done and she'll keep showing up or she'll keep selling something or whatever it is. So it's just not to worry about it, really. Don't watch it if you don't want to watch it, basically. So other than that, obviously they're still, not only are they just chasing Justin and team for more docs, it's also obviously Jed Wallace. And I guess the feeling from Jed Wallace at this point is in a kind of a bit of a tricky situation, because the judge in the past has already said that he has to give up his client list and that he has to give communications that he feels are privileged and stuff like that. But I guess just Jed is hanging out on the judge to pass this ruling that says he's kicked out of it anyway due to jurisdiction, because it's already been kicked out once, and then which caused Blake to make the second amended complaint, which really didn't prove anything new to tie Jed to New York-based jurisdiction. So I can understand why he would be hanging out and saying, I'm not going to give all of that stuff that is actually my business's proprietary information, my client list, what I do, what I can do, what I've done in the past. Why should I have to give that if she hasn't even really got a case that she can bring against me because it's the wrong jurisdiction? So you can understand why he's stalling, really. And it's kind of, I think this is where you get a bit frustrated with the law as well, because you think, well, come on, speed it up, Judge, because, you know, there's always arguments floating backwards and forwards about this is burdensome and overkill and all of the rest of it. So why should he have to provide all of this stuff if she hasn't got a case against him in New York? So basically, just have a quick run through what the argument is, in effect. So Blake had pointed out, from her perspective, Wallace has only given 37 documents out of 98 requests. He gave only 37 documents, totaling something like 194 pages. Many requests were ignored, even after promising to produce documents. Blake argues this is suspicious given evidence that Wallace was deeply involved in an online smear campaign. And of course, she levied various insults against him as well that make him sound like some type of Watergate figure and a hired gun and blah, blah, blah. So her main allegations, one more time, manipulated social media algorithms, used CTR manipulation, click-through rate tricks, created fake narratives and Reddit and TikTok threads, did all of this without fingerprints to conceal Wayfair misconduct. It started August 8th, 2024, bringing in that he was charging $30,000 per month and that at least $90,000 has been paid. Bringing up that he used Signal messaging, which specifically has disappearing messages, and none of those messages have so far been produced by him, despite proof in other parties' documents that Signal was used for discussions about the smear campaign. She accuses them of spoliation, which is basically destroying evidence, even after knowing that litigation would have been in the offing. And the court has previously warned that using Signal and deleting could lead to sanctions. Wallace also only gave documents up to December 20th, 2024, arguing nothing relevant after that happened. Blake says this is wrong because the retaliation is ongoing and the court already ruled that post-December 2024 docs are relevant. So a lot's going to hinge, I think, maybe on the judge's response to this 2-page letter of Wayfarers. But at this point, the judge really does need to catch up with that docket, because there's so many things that have gone unanswered, including the things like the letter from J. Alexander Townsend, which was a really intelligent letter, and also like the amicus brief and things. Even if it's to say these things don't belong in on my docket, he has to kind of get his ass into gear, Judge Lyman. I think at this point he should do us all a favour and only have this one case on the go, because I'm kind of ready for it to be done. And yeah, it's getting increasingly tiring, I think, and tiresome. And it's time really not to have Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds so much in all of our headspaces, I think. And if it goes on and on and on, I think the danger is that we all do let the idea of how unfair it all is slide, and that just inside suffers as a result. You know, if it carries on, especially for years and years, if it carries on after March next year, if that legal case is not the end of it, and there's more legal cases, you know what I mean, or appeals and the rest of it, and it ends up going on for years and years and years. I can't see myself doing this for years and years. So Jed apparently has also refused to answer key questions from interrogatories 13 and 14, because Blake asked for names of employees, subcontractors who helped with social media manipulation, bots, algorithm influence, etc. She does really bang on about this idea that he has a whole army and in other countries and all of the rest of it. She really does have this idea of him being Blofeld and it being like Spectre and arms everywhere and the rest of it. So Wallace has refused, saying it's confidential and burdensome, but the court already ruled this info is relevant and must be disclosed. This is what is the frustration, isn't it, really? Because we saw this with Justin, really, that it all seemed to be going along swimmingly when he was suing Blake as well. You know, motions were being answered, stuff was being prepared, and the next thing it just disappears. And it's kind of like that again, that you have to be seen to be providing everything, even though the case may make no sense and have no legal argument, that you still have to be seen to be doing these things. And the next day it could literally just disappear in a puff of smoke, and you've wasted all that time and all that effort, and you've given these people ammunition against you that they may turn up and use in a different way against you, or in Jed's case, may affect like the validity of his business and his ability to prove that he can protect his clients as well. So requests for production 10 and 11, these are the requests that ask for Wallace's relationship with Brian Friedman. Details of work for Wayfarer and Friedman related to social media manipulation. I think Blake had narrowed the date range and scope, but Wallace still hasn't agreed. So Blake's main argument is that Wallace is hiding evidence of a smear campaign, that this allowing the signal message deletion, they should have anticipated that, and that those messages would be needed for litigation purposes. And she also says they can't just say nothing exists without explaining what happened to missing messages and documents. So she wants the court to force Wallace to produce everything, including signal metadata and post-December 2024 documents. If they can't produce it, she wants an explanation why and whether it was destroyed, and possibly impose sanctions for spoliation, because we know Blake likes to put in lots of requests for sanctions, as we recently saw on the Wayfarer response regarding, I think it was Brian Friedman, wasn't it, when they said Miss Lively's latest request for sanctions, which was rather funny and witty. And just pointing out that she's asked for a lot of sanctions along the way. So I think that's it, more or less, from the Jed perspective of things. So it's whether the judge basically is going to get his ass into gear and decide to rule on whether he stays in Blake's second amended complaint or not, whether he's going to buy the jurisdiction element this time around. Yeah, I've just found that Ryan Reynolds quote amongst the various tabs that I have opened on the computer. That statement was, "What we saw at the time was a wedding venue on Pinterest," Reynolds says. "What we saw after was a place built upon devastating tragedy." But the thing is, anybody knows, even like people that are, you know, are only young or whatever you want to call them, or minimally educated, knows And there's certainly been enough movies on the topic, what happens on a plantation. So, you know, you go looking for a plantation, you know what happened there. If it took until afterwards, until other people pointed it out to you, then that's kind of problematic, isn't it? It's a whole other discussion on its own, that one, isn't it, basically? But yeah, that was one of the things that Perez presented to the judge in Las Vegas. I think that might be more or less it for today. I'll just pause it a second to see if there's anything I've missed that I was going to say. And probably the other thing that should finally make mention of is that now there's this notice of Blake Lively's motion to compel, where they're demanding an oral argument now in front of the judge. So this is, when was this dated? Let's have a look, August 22nd. So please take notice that for the reasons stated in the accompanying memorandum of law in support of Blake Lively's motion to compel and the accompanying declaration of Kristen E. Bender with the exhibits attached thereto, the undersigned will move this court before Judge Lyman at the United States Courthouse for the Southern District of New York on a date and time to be set by the court for an order pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 37, compelling defendants Jed Wallace and Street Relations, Inc., the Wallace defendants, to provide full and complete responses and produce documents in response to Ms. Lively's discovery requests. Ms. Lively respectfully requests that the court set this motion for oral argument. So she's had enough, basically, hasn't she? And she wants it done in public, orally, in front of the judge, at speed, done now, stamping her heels and the rest of it. So basically that was my little catch-up today. In many ways, at this point, there's still nothing new, really, if you like. It's more just the behind-the-scenes shenanigans and the idea that the whole James Vuska thing, it just opened up that opportunity for Leslie Sloan again to stick her hand up and ask for her expenses and treble damages and the rest of it, I guess. So that's it, really. Up to press, I think. I don't want to keep you any longer on your Sunday. I think that's probably a reasonable covering of it. But I think the main stories was just the other stories coming out about Ryan, and I just literally can't. It's like I feel it from here to here whenever I consider Ryan Reynolds, and it's like I wouldn't even want to be in a room with him at this point. It would be, I just couldn't. As soon as I say that, it's like, it's like all here. It's it's an interesting thing to experience. You tell me how you feel about it all, and how you feel about what are your beliefs behind the whole Robert Downey Jr. thing. And what I would say about that kind of thing is I really hate it. I find it really uncomfortable when people insist as well on bringing up people's past histories in terms of the things they've been through, the mistakes they've made, when they try to ambush people with stuff like that, knowing it's something that they're sensitive to. And I feel like there's possibly an element of that with Robert Downey Jr. I didn't like it when there was a reporter a while ago, a British reporter, Krishnan Guru Murphy, who kind of ambushed Downey Jr. with trying to talk about his past when he was promoting a Marvel movie. And Downey Jr. ended up walking off because it was just so out of context and none of his business, really, basically, trying to drag up things from the past and years ago at this point in time. And I felt like that a bit the other day when Tom Hiddleston got a bit ambushed over Taylor Swift as well. A reporter dragged that in, like a radio DJ reporter type thing. I don't even know what they were discussing, something totally different, but kind of, I think it was about football maybe or something. So the guy just like went, oh, Taylor Swift is saying like sourdough this and sourdough that, you know, insinuating that some people are thinking that she's going to be doing the halftime show on the Super Bowl. But like Tom Hiddleston straight away is like, you just dragged straight out of where your headspace that you're in into the past, and it's like, And it's like, it puts people in such an awful position because, you know, I'm not the world's hugest Tom Hiddleston fan, but I do think he handled all of that very respectfully. This idea of just being the getaway car, you know, that got her out of one relationship and then into another, if you like, straight away. Was it out of Calvin Harris and into Joe? That he was like the intermediary of, you know, like the boyfriend in between, the rebound guy that kind of helped get her out of a situation, gave her an excuse. He's always been very respectful about that, I think you would have to say, and never slated her or anything like that, you know, never changed in his perspective. And the thing is, the guy's married now, he's got a kid with another woman. Why are you still throwing kind of Taylor Swift at him, even in a kind of second hand kind of way? He's not Taylor Swift's spokesperson. He's not got a vested interest in whether sourdough Sam means anything or sourdough bread means anything or it's alluding to anything. Just have a little bit of respect for people and their feelings, isn't it, in your day-to-day business? That's that's my thing, I would think. You know, if people want to share their past and they want you to approach, and they've made it clear they're happy for you to approach them and talk about the past and bring things up in the past, even then you have to have a little bit of sensitivity that somebody might not be on a good day and in a good mood to deal with that kind of conversation. You know, that sometimes some of these things we share, these vulnerabilities, we can't access that easily on a day-to-day basis. Some days we're better at accepting it than other days, you know what I mean? Sometimes we're all naturally in better form, aren't we? Or we've eaten better or hydrated better or whatever it is. You know, so anyway, that's just my little ramble for a Sunday, just a little catch up. I'm feeling like a ton of stuff will dump again tomorrow. It's so nice, like at the weekends when you know nothing can go on that docket really, but even then, it's like I can get stuff on Saturday because of the time difference and stuff. But thank you for watching and commenting, and you're all saying some lovely things and I really, really appreciate it. Please do hit that like and subscribe, share if you can or if you feel moved to, and I will see you again soon. Drop a like and subscribe, and please check out the description box. There's often free resources there.